Good morning, everyone. Everyone can hear me? Yes. Okay, so I'm just here to look at the pros and cons of incorporation. So we've all done this exercise before. Should I, shouldn't I? I did it when I got married. Right, so first, the biggest pro to incorporation, we've had that Section 24 was introduced, triggers a extra tax liability because the interest is restricted. So we looked at alternative modelling, and the company model effectively avoids that extra tax charge. Doesn't give you any other benefits from where you were before they introduced Section 24. It just puts you back in the same tax position as you were before, effectively. So so if you would have been paying £2,000 worth of tax before, by incorporating with and introducing this and paying a combined amount of corporation tax and dividend tax, you are effectively back to what the same amount you're paying 2,000 before as you were. So yeah, no better off, but not worse off because of the changes in the tax system. Okay. So we'll do a balance. So we'll do pro and then we'll do con. Okay. So there is a cost, and it is a commitment to incorporate. So you were incurring costs, and I'm sure you know there'll be professional fees. There'll be fees to pay to lawyers to do the conveyancing. There'll be fees to pay for advice in terms of modelling and maybe doing a report on whether it's worthwhile to incorporate. And probably the biggest cost will be mortgage fees in terms of actually moving the properties into the company. And Nick's here later to discuss that, and you can ask him about what those fees will be. It's not exactly a one-way ticket, but because there is something called disincorporation relief, so you can come out of a company, but again it'll be expensive to do so, and it'll be complicated. So if you're going to go in, I would look at this as a commitment, and you're not planning to come out of this unless you're planning to liquidate the portfolio. Why would you want to do unincorporation once you've gone in? Someone mentioned a change in government, and so there might be a change in the tax system, which then implements more or higher tax rates on companies. It's a difficult question. No one knows what will happen. So it's kind of an impossible question because no one knows what's going to happen. You can influence by voting for the right party, but yeah, it's a difficult question. And a change in personal circumstances as well. Something might happen and you might need to cash, so you might
Can I ask
revisit the
model
model.
on
Yeah.
that, in terms of like chartered institute of accountants type thing?
Yeah.
Given the fact that we're talking about our style of company, but there's lots of bigger style corporate, institutional style companies that are in limited company structures.
Yeah.
Your view from an accountancy law point of view, how challenging would that be for the government to change that? It's very easy to change personal tax, but there's some suggestion that it would be much more complicated, but not impossible.
The government can change tax rates in a way, by passing laws to change the system. I suppose if you're going to get political about it, you're looking at who the donors are, the political donors are, and a lot of political donors will probably, have corporate large investment portfolios, and if they're influencing that decision, then yeah, they're unlikely to go for it. But in terms of when they change the system to target, sort of, I suppose, small landlords really. They're not going to be the sort of people that are going to have influence on policy effectively. So yeah, it is, again, it's a bit of an impossible question to answer, but it's yeah. But, yeah, so.
It is slightly crystal ball time, Andrew, but I think I think this was pretty much a bit of a plain old tax grab. And if you turn around and look at what they're doing, they turn around and say you're going to pay, you're not going to get any more tax relief than 20%. So people were getting higher rate tax relief. They were getting 40% tax relief on some of their rental income rather than just the 20%. If you look at what a company pays as corporation tax, they pay 19% currently, and that's going down. So actually they are getting less tax relief than we get in our own personal name, even post the change. So there is one argument that says, if this was a tax grab, would they turn around and start to restrict mortgage interest being set off in a company? Well, if they brought this in originally as a tax grab, there's no different, or to bring it down to the max you can claim is 20%, well, the max you can claim under a company is 19 at the moment. So, but that really depends on what you think the motivation of doing this was for. Personally, I think it was a combination of things, but tax grab was certainly one of the biggest. So I think it's fair to say, companies are now being taxed, or companies are taxed the same way as we would be now. They have the same amount of relief that they can claim, because there is no higher rate tax in a company.
It also makes the assumption that the 20% Section 24 tax will stay at 20%.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying it would, but theoretically, all tax relief would be taken by a different government.
I mean, I cover a tax later that I think is, if someone wanted to bring it in for companies, or restrict mortgage interest relief for companies, that is the perfect way to do it. Do I think it would be used like that? Most probably not, but it's there. So people have talked about, this would be quite complicated to restrict mortgage interest relief. There is actually a tax and a vehicle that they could very easily use if they wanted to. And it's the same as anything, tax law changes year on year. You can only deal with what you know at the time, but you do need to have at least a little forward look to make sure that if you are jumping into something, you're not jumping out the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah.
I think at the time when all this was brought in, we were trying to bridge the gap between a huge budget deficit, and they've made an election pledge not to raise the rates of tax, the income tax rates and national insurance tax rates. So there were a series of stealth taxes brought in, and this was one of them, to increase the tax flow to the Treasury effectively. So now supposedly we're moving out of austerity. Who knows what's going to happen?
Is there any evidence that if you're trading as a limited company, that your valuation of your property wouldn't be just based on the bricks and mortar valuation, it would be based on the income generated from that asset? Why else does a company own a house other than as an investment? So
are you talking about when you incorporate, or
so if you incorporate,
yeah.
Is there more of an argument to the mortgage companies that actually don't value this house on the bricks and mortar value it on the income that it's generating? Anyone got any evidence of that?
I think I don't think you get that on a valuation on the remortgage market. You might be able to make that argument when someone's buying. If on exit you decided to sell the company and someone was buying its shares with all the properties held within that company, there is an argument to turn around and say the valuation of that company is on the income and hence profit it produces rather than the bricks and mortar values of the specific properties that make it up. I think it'd be very hard to push to turn around and get a lender to revalue on that basis if you've got a 6-bed HMO in a non-Article 4 area that you've stuck a couple of en-suites in and occupy the same house next door and do what you've done and do it that way.
Yeah, just add that to John, I think you might do it if it's a commercial valuer. Barclays and HSBC, but they will lend loan to value at 50% and want capital payment.
God, I thought I was going to struggle with 45 minutes. Okay.
So I just wanted to talk about
Yes.
costs. You're going to cover some rough numbers on costs later on? Or?
Yes, right,
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of personal tax plan, so a company once you've incorporated will pay corporation tax on the profits of whatever you generate in there, and obviously the interest is the tax deductible in the company. You'll know, because you've all got companies, that you can extract profit from a company by way of dividends. You normally take a minimum salary, and you can take interest on loans, etc. And there's also options to put money into pension and that sort of thing as well. A big benefit from going for a company is if you don't want to be a high rate taxpayer, or if you don't necessarily need the cash, you don't have to be, because you can control how much you want to take out as income from the company. There's various things you can or thresholds you can keep below. You can keep within the basic rate tax threshold. With your personal allowance at the moment, that's 50k. So you'll only pay 7.5% on any dividends up to 50k, or you've got combined other income with that. You have, for those of you with children, where you get child benefit, there's a threshold of 50k, where if you earn over that, you have to start paying it back, and you pay the full amount back between 50 and 60. So if you keep your income below that, you don't have to pay that back. And the next threshold is effective, which is 100,000, where you will pay 32.5% on the dividends, but you can, if your personal income goes above 100,000, you start losing your personal allowance as well, which is it's like a 60% tax rate in that bracket. So you can control that. So you only take out dividends or income from the company to keep you below those thresholds. So there is a control aspect to the company. Okay. On the negative side of that, there is tax on profit extraction. So because you've incorporated, there's no director's loan. You've effectively exchanged the equity value of your properties for shares in the business. So there's no loan created unless you lend the company money. So straight away you are pulling out. If you're going to pull out income from the company, you're going to pay tax. There's an example there, just to demonstrate actually that the tax, you're back to the same position effectively. So if you carried on as an individual without Section 24, you wanted to take 100k out of the company, or you weren't 100k as an individual, you'd pay 27,500 of tax. And then if that was put into a company and the company made 100k of pre-tax profits and you extracted all that as income, the total tax liability would be 27,675. So
that's including the corporation.
That's including the corporation tax and the dividend tax, yeah. So it assumes you can take it. Yeah.
So is that assuming you take money out how? Is it as dividend?
Yeah, as dividend, yeah.
As dividend.
Yes,
what about if you took it as other things? Salary or?
Yeah, it's assuming, it's just looking at what the tax would be if you earn that amount in the company pre-tax. The company pays corporation tax, and then you extract all the profits effectively. So it's looking for a like-for-like situation, because if you made 100k pre-tax personally, you would pay tax on it as 100k pre-tax.
So is this just because it's a number of 100,000? Because I thought the principle always was that the feeling was that if you had money in the company, took it out, that was always going to have income in the company, as opposed to that was always going to be more tax, because once you take dividends out, there's a dividend tax rate. So is it just because examples of 100,000 that it's looking like even?
No, generally, if you look at a graph there is a sort of graph, and it sort of follows each other along to a certain track, and then once you get to the sort of the top slice, 150k, it sort of widens a little bit, but it's generally the same along that.
Don't forget, this is without section 24.
This is without section 24, yeah, before section 24. Yeah, that's right, yeah. So, okay. Right. So lenders, so obviously the service model came around because some lenders didn't like the lease model. So a corporate model is fairly simple. The company owns the properties, the company gets the mortgage. It's simple. The lenders like it. The rental income is going into the same entity as the mortgage is being paid out. So the lenders like it. There is an opportunity when, say we do this, we generally do this into a new company, so incorporate into a new company. If you have got director's loan or losses in your existing PPP lease model company, you know, we can create an income stream between the two. So we move profits from the newly incorporated company to the lease model company to utilise those director's loans and losses over a period of time. Once we've got that to a position where there's nothing left, we'll probably just liquidate that company and then just move forward with the newly incorporated company. So you're not, you know, having the expense of running multiple companies. You've just got that one company at the point. In terms of
Matter of interest, why set up a new company?
So part of the incorporation process, you have to really go into a new company. What you're doing is you're picking up when you incorporate, you're saying you've got a business, and you're picking up that business and putting that business into a new company, and the two mirror before and after. Mm-hmm. So that's why you go into a new company.
And if you're on the service structure, the new company will be both those entities, both those roles and activities will be put into one entity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You wouldn't need the service company anymore. So the service company was there really because of the franchise fee, because the company can only get tax relief on the full franchise fee. You can't get that as an individual. It's capital to an individual, so you can't write it off as a cost. So you still needed a company under the service model to use.
We've got some properties that are owned personally, or companies that are limited company. If we wanted to get those all into one, would we need to take both and put them into a new model, or could we just
what we'd probably do is,
the other two?
if it was right for you to do it, then we'd need to just say your unincorporated properties is your partnership business.
Right, okay.
You pick those up, we put those in a company, and then we're actually looking at for someone else at the moment creating sort of like a group structure, because when you pass properties within a group, there's no stamp duty and no capital gains. But we'd have to I think incorporate first and then do the next process. Okay, double tax on the sale of the property. So, I mean, this is why most people in the first instance didn't buy properties in a company, mainly because of the exit strategy. So, when an individual sells a property, gets taxed once, capital gain, the tax at a rate of either currently 18 or 28%. You can use your annual exemption. And then you've paid the tax, the rest of it, you pay back the mortgage, and whatever's left over is yours to spend. When a company sells a property, the capital gain that it generates is subject to corporation tax. Okay, and there's no exemption for it. So if it's £1, it gets taxed at the relevant rate of corporation tax, or if it's 100,000, it gets taxed at the same percentage. And then what's left after you've paid the corporation tax is still in the company. And then to get money out of a company, you need to take it as income and pay tax on it. So again, I've just plugged in 100k because that was a nice round number. So an individual would pay capital gains tax of 20,890. If you sell from the company, the total tax liability, if you took the money out as a dividend after you paid the corporation tax, would be 35,800. So.
And is that individual one person or two people?
That's just one person. I just did it for one person.
So there's a significant difference if you own the properties to people, basically.
Well,
It's
yeah.
a lot better being an individual because you pay a lot less capital gains.
Yeah, well, yeah, because the capital gain could be 200,000 and then it's 100. It's just an example to demonstrate that there's extra tax to pay if a company sells a property and you extract all the money personally.
No, the question is that the property is owned jointly by two people
Yeah.
and sold.
Yeah.
You've got two personal allowances.
Oh yeah, you've
Yeah,
got 5,000. Yeah.
Just on that individual tax liability, is that assuming one person, say, as an example, assuming that there must be a lower rate taxpayer?
Yeah, I did it assuming they had no other income basically.
So the difference between 20,000 and 35 is wider if you're a lower rate taxpayer. But if you're a lower rate taxpayer, you might not incorporate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the reality is that you probably only incorporate if you're a high rate taxpayer, in which case the 20,000 would be 27,000. Nearly 28,000 if it's 28%.
Yeah, but I also built in the corporate model that they get the 7.5% dividend and not pay 2.5%. So yeah,
But the point is
yeah.
double tax.
It's double tax. That's the point.
So the corporate model, is that the capital gain plus the tax on dividends? Is it the total amount of tax you have to pay?
Yeah.
To get the money in your pocket.
To get the money?
Yeah, that's it.
So that includes the tax on extracting the profit?
Yeah.
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 All I'd say, guys, on this one, that I've gone into quite a lot of detail on numbers. You might be sick of them by the time we do it later. And as you can imagine, with different presenters, and we're all on a similar brief but trying to cover different things, there's a lot of interlap here. So Paul is sort of dealing with the principles here. I go into some of these things in a bit more detail, so some of these questions and some of the hard and fast numbers, and rather than picking, because Paul was trying to show a principle, he's picked 100 grand, I've chosen 5 HMOs worth 450,000, 300, etc., etc. So there'll be, I think, a little bit more relevant and a bit more detail on it. So if we get the principle of where Paul is, you will get the detail later. Paul's stressing things, he's not sure.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Thanks, John. Thanks. Right. Okay. So another approach to incorporation is when you incorporate, you effectively rebase the value of the market or the base value of the property in the company. So let's say we brought the property for 200,000. That was the base cost for you personally. When we incorporate, the base cost is say the property's worth 400,000. That is the value that it goes into the company at. So if we sold it the next day for 400,000, there's no capital gain in the company. So it's 400,000, less 400,000, no corporation tax on that, and then obviously if you wanted to extract that 400,000, then you would pay the tax on it coming out of the dividend. Does that make sense?
Effectively, you wipe out the capital gains.
In the company, yeah.
But sorry, the gain's not wiped out.
The can is kicked down the road.
It's kicked down the road, it's not wiped out.
Yeah, no, the gain is carried in the I'm talking about the actual company itself. So let's say we wanted to sell the property after day one and reinvest those funds in a different property or commercial property or something else, let's say, then the company would receive 400,000 and effectively have no tax liability in the company, and you've got that full 400,000 to reinvest. If you wanted to If you wanted to take the money out of the company, you could do it. You can distribute it as income. That'd be taxed as a dividend. If you wanted to say release, you can sort of buy back shares if you wanted to. Now those shares are pregnant with the gain that you've transferred on incorporation. So if you dispose of some of those shares, then the original capital gain that you would have paid if you sold the property personally is then triggered. Yeah.
But if you sold all the properties individually, the company would then have no share of it.
It doesn't matter. But you'd have cash in the business, which would be the share value. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And then you can do what you want with that cash. It's only what triggers the capital gain that you would originally pay on the sale of the properties that have been transferred into shares is the disposal of those shares. That's
So if you wind up the company, you have to pay the total capital gain between personal ownership and company, and then between company on that date and final capital gain.
That's it. Yeah.
And if you give shares to avoid inheritance tax,
that would be incorporated
trigger
into that
capital gain.
calculation. Okay. So remortgaging. So this is when you've got the properties in your personal name, you remortgage to release a bit of equity to yourself, and you pocket the cash. There's no tax implications to that. The money just goes to you personally. When you go to remortgage in a company, the remortgaged funds would go into the company, so they're stuck there. You can't get them out. You could get them out as a loan from the business, but there are tax implications for taking loans from companies to directors. So one's benefit in kind on the interest, two's something called Section 455 tax, which is a tax at 32.5% on the amount of loan, which is basically held by HMRC and then repaid to you when you repay that loan. So it just doesn't work from a remortgaging point of view.
Just going back to the previous slide, I'm getting a bit slow today. So I understand that the capital, when you transfer properties into your company, the capital gains, they're rebased at the current market value, but the shares become pregnant, as you said.
Yeah.
Now, at what point, so on second death of the two directors, then there's a
that then becomes an inheritance tax issue. So on death, effectively what happens is when the asset moves into probate, they move in at their market, they're revalued effectively at their market value. So that gain at that point in time is then wiped out.
Okay. If you wound down the business by selling the companies, properties, but the profit from the properties would stay in the company, and that could be transferred into a SAS, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you stop trading as if you sold them all and it was just I don't know what the correct word is, but a cash pot, and it's not no longer a trading entity.
Yeah.
How long can you keep that company?
Indefinitely. Yeah.
Okay, but on second, can you make children shareholders of that company, or does that trigger again?
But that would trigger if you gift shares away to children. Yeah, that effectively triggers gain. But based on the current value of those shares at that point in time. So, but obviously you've got the gain in the shares already.
Gifting existing shares. What about making directors and creating new shareholders? Is that the same thing?
No. So it depends how you do it, and I've got a little slide on something that might be clever to do later on. If you transfer value by creating a new class of share, then there is a deemed gift. Yeah. So that does trigger a capital gain. But I'll come to the second point in a minute.
Yeah, can I ask, if it's in personal name, you can remortgage, you can pull the funds out. Can you do anything you like with those funds, or is there a rule that you've got to buy property with them?
No, you can do what you like in the company, yeah. So if you've had enough of property or HMOs, you can reinvest, say, in just a share portfolio if you wanted to just, have it as an investment company that with no hassle, that just generates an income. And then you can pull out dividends and that sort of thing from that. But or you can just simply leave it as a cash pot and just drip feed yourself dividends, so you're only a basic rate taxpayer over a period of time.
I think Gertie's question more was though, if we hold the properties personally and you remortgage and that cash comes out, you can do whatever you want with it. Yeah. So it's in the personal name. Yeah. So that is that you lose that benefit by going into a company because you can't get it out.
I've done that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the point about reinvesting again. Once you've if you sell the property within the company, you pay less corporation tax because obviously the market value is rebased in the company. So if you want to reinvest in something different in the company, then you've got more cash to play with because the tax is less. So that's the point there. Inheritance tax. So we said before that the share value, will form the value for the purposes of being an asset for the value of your estate on death, effectively. So that will be calculated based on usually an investment property business on the value of the properties, less any debts, less any future sort of tax liability that's in the company. If there's not enough cash in your estate to pay the IHT, then where's that cash going to come from, basically? So if a property is needed to be sold to release that cash, then the company's going to have to pay that to release the cash. But then the company's going to pay corporation tax on any gain that's in the company, and then the cash can come out to the estate, and then that can be used. But if that was a personal, if properties were in personally, the property could just be sold, and then that cash that's realised can just be used to pay the IHT. So you've got that sort of extra corporation.
So would you say the corporation, if the corporation has to sell property?
Yeah. The company sells property.
Yeah.
And then the company will, because the company owns it, a separate legal entity, the company will pay corporation tax on that gain.
Yeah.
And then the money needs to come out into the estate to pay the inheritance tax. So.
What tax will be paid when it goes from the company into the estate?
No.
No, there's no tax.
It's inheritance tax based on the value of your estate. Yeah. So you don't pay. You wouldn't pay capital gains tax and inheritance tax. Yeah.
But is there an income tax on the estate when it receives the dividend?
No.
No?
No. Yeah, it makes sense that there would be. So what you're thinking is, obviously, you die, company sells the property, pays corporation tax on the gain, and then the estate has to get that money out. And normally that would be by way of dividend, if you like, and there would be a dividend tax to pay. But actually, upon death, what's happened? If you're only liquidating 1 or 2 or 3 properties, yes, there would be. If you are liquidating the whole company, there would not be a second layer of tax to pay. So I cover it with a couple of examples later, which is what options do you have if you leave this all the way until you die, and what options do your heirs have, and if you want to keep some of the property portfolio intact, you're going to end up paying a load more tax. If they want to turn around and liquidate the whole business, that's pretty much the only way to do it in a tax efficient way. But I'll go through some specific numbers on that.
So if they're owned personally, if you die, doesn't the capital gains die with you?
But the value of those properties will form the part of the value of the estate for inheritance tax purposes. So you'd still have an IHT liability on them, but you know, they're not, you haven't got the added complication that they're in a company and you need to release the cash from the company to then.
So basically, John, you're saying you've got 3 levels of tax. You've got the corporation tax to pay if you only sold one property. So you pay the corporation tax on capital gains, then you would pay dividend tax to take the money out into the estate, and then you would pay inheritance tax as well.
Yeah.
What I'm doing is there's a lot of tax inefficiency if you decide to incorporate, and at some stage you want to get rid of some of the houses before you die. The only way for it to be efficient is to keep the houses until you go.
No, and I think when you see the presentation later, you'll see that there are options that you have, so that isn't necessarily true. But if you want to, so if you remember when Hoagie turned around and looked at incorporation for him and Linda, if you were in the franchise then, his whole thing was, we're going to sell the properties, we want all that cash, and we're going to spend all that cash. If that's your situation, then going into a company creates more tax for you. If your situation is, I want to pay less tax at the moment, and then I'm going to sell them at some point, or I'm going to die and they're going to be there, and I don't need to get all that cash in one hit at that time, then there are some good ways to access that cash later on. If you need it all, and you want to spend it all, incorporation is not for you. It's the short answer to that. So that's why Hoagie kept it in his own name, sold the lot, and he's spending all the money. Whereas, you know, for a lot of us, that isn't necessarily what we want to do. And in some cases, the tax saving now over the next however many years we're going to keep these properties is going to outweigh. And then when you set it all up, you know, you're not going to take it all in one hit. You don't want to take it all in one hit because it's going to hurt.
So can I just clarify? So if you sell a property and it's in the company, you pay corporation tax, and if you're alive, you'll pay dividend tax. If you're dead, you skip the dividend tax and go straight to inheritance tax.
That's right, yeah.
Sorry, Paul, just on. Just to highlight, I think you might understand, the share value of that first bullet point, that's not the main point, because you would have equity value of the same value, more or less. If you But the fact that it's instead of equity value, it's just share value, so that could be the same.
Absolutely.
The issue is it's in the company, not because it's...
Yeah, the issue is that it's in the company, yeah. So that's one. So sale of shares. So some people want to before death maybe want to offload the whole portfolio. So rather than, if they can find a willing buyer to buy the whole property portfolio, you might be able to do a deal with them in terms of saying, do you want to buy the company rather than buy the individual properties out of the company? So that kind of gets around the double tax situation that we mentioned at the start, in terms of the company paying corporation tax on the gain, and then you having to extract the money from the company. So what it will do is obviously trigger, if you sell the shares, it will trigger that gain that's deferred in those shares already, but it kind of puts you back to where you were if you own the properties personally and sold them. The benefit of selling shares as well. When you sell a residential investment property at the moment, the capital gains tax rates are higher at 18 and 28%. We'll say 28% for you guys because you're probably going to be higher rate taxpayers already. But when you sell shares, it's a lower capital gains tax rate at the moment. It's 10 and 20%. So it can result in a lower. If you can find a willing buyer to buy the whole portfolio, buy the shares, then you could get away with just paying at the moment 20%. Depends what happens with capital gains tax rates and everything else. But
So the company, the houses in the company, if all the ASTs and all the management of it is going on in the same company, you're not doing that separately, is it classified as an investment business or can it be a trading business?
Yeah, it'll be an investment business.
Okay, not trading.
Can you make it a trading business?
It's not generally. If you've got, there's a set of rules really that HMRC follow to distinguish between what's a trading business and what's an investment business, and they'll look at the balance sheet and they'll look at what assets generate the income, and if you've got all your assets are your houses, they're investment assets generating 100% of the income effectively. So I wouldn't. It'll be a tough argument to have with HMRC to make a property investment business a trade basically.
What if you were managing some HMOs for others as well? Do you have your own?
Yeah, that's the trade in itself. But they would look at the whole. They would look at the balance sheet and say, well, what's the if there is investment activity in there, it's all likely to be at 20%. But at the moment, 20% being the highest rate of capital gains tax isn't a bad rate effectively. I was going to make another point on that. Okay. So once you've incorporated, what sort of things can you look at? Freezer shares might be a good idea. So when we were talking earlier, we were talking about introducing children or post incorporation. What you potentially could do is issue them with a class of share, so you're not actually giving any capital value away on their when you create these shares, and you can say that these shares are subject to any capital growth in the value of the company from the day they buy the shares. So the capital gains value or the market value of the company at the date before you issue the freezer shares stays with the existing shareholders, and then any future growth potentially can be shared between all shareholders. So there's that opportunity. They can always, they can have rights to dividends and voting as well. So that's, if you want to give income to the children as well. So there is that option without creating a capital gains tax liability on gifting to them. You can also gift small chunks away of your existing shares, as long as you keep within your £12,000 exemption. But we're talking relatively small numbers there. And then you've got there's also things like gifts into trust and lifetime gifting. Are you going to cover all this later?
In a small way, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if you gift into trust, effectively you can hold over gains into the trust and not trigger the capital gains. But trusts in their own right have certain tax obligations. So income that goes into trust is taxed at the highest rate possible, and unless that's released to the beneficiaries, say the children, then they all pay the tax and not get it back. But if they release the money to the individual, it just depends on what tax rate the children pay, basically, in terms of what they say. And then there's also 10-year charges and things like that. So you have got to look at that quite carefully, and that requires a bit of planning. But there are options basically. Okay.